Okay, so remember what we're doing here in chapter 4, also chapter 3. We're asking, in fact, I'm about to go back to chapter 3. We're asking ourselves how we can understand truth from the standpoint of a truth table, right? So a truth table has a restricted but very powerful use. And also how we can evaluate sentences in terms of their relationships to each other, but also on an individual level. Okay. So now what I'd like to do is take this sentence. I'm going to go back to chapter 3, and I'm going to say that the sentence, it's not the case that A is both a tet and a cube, right? Is our first sentence, and now I'm going to add another sentence. You can add sentences either by hitting the plus sign, just like you can add reference columns by hitting the plus sign. You can also use the drop-down menu. You can also use the keystroke. So since I'm using an Apple machine, I use Command A. In the Windows-based machine, it's what, Control A. So now I'm going to add the following sentence. It's not the case that A is a tet, or it's not the case that A is a cube. And I happen to like giving a little bit more space here, so I'm going to do that. So now we're going to look at comparing the two sentences, right? How are we going to do that? Well, first, let's remind ourselves what our main connective is for each. Is it clear to everyone? Or if it's not clear, let me know. If it's not clear, sing out that the disjunction is the main connective for the second sentence. And it used to be the case, unless I think I'm using an older version of the program, but we used to get these cute little numbers. So I'm going to call this sentence 1 and sentence 2. That way it'll be easy for us to refer to it, to refer to each. Okay, so our disjunction is the main connective. So ultimately that's what we care about when we're evaluating this sentence. And then look at the gray vertical on sentence 1. That tells us that the negation is the main connective. So let's go ahead, and since we're already over here at sentence 1, let's work the values for the conjunction and then the values for the negation. And again, when you click on the column under a given connective, Boole tells you what your reference will be. Reference in this case. So we know that a conjunction is true when and only when each of the conjuncts is
true.
Thank you. Okay, so true, false, false, false. False, true, true, true. Now we're going to move over. Doesn't matter which negation we do first, right? You just want to work the negations on each side of the disjunction and then work the disjunction. So we have false, true, false, true, false, false, true, true. And then lastly, a disjunction is false when and only when each of the disjuncts is
false.
Thank you. False, true, true, true. Okay. Did we set up and determine everything correctly? Well, let's hit our button here, the check mark button. Yay, we did. We got our green check marks. Now let's take a look at our assessment options. So notice here, since we're dealing with multiple sentences, we don't have available to us the assessments that focus on a single sentence. Question, are these sentences equivalent? Well, we look at the column under the main connective for each, and we see that row 1, they're both false, row 2, they're both true, 3, 4, they're both true. The sentences are tautologically equivalent. Now, I'm not going to work the other assessments yet, just because I want us to focus on equivalence. And notice that we get a green check mark. So again, one of the things that I really appreciate about Boole is that when we're working alone, we get, some immediate feedback. Sometimes it's super, super helpful. Sometimes it's not helpful, but at least you get something like, oh yes, I did something wrong. Now I just have to figure out what I did incorrectly. So what do we think so far? What I'm hoping anyway is that you're saying, yeah, Mia, I remember this. I'm comfortable with it. But don't be shy about saying, in fact, if you are shy, maybe you think, hey, I'm gonna put up a chat because I wanna share some idea. I just don't want to vocalize it. Everybody's good? Okay.
I'm good. I get it.
Sweet.
Yeah, I'm good.
Okay. All right. So.
Can we do one where they're not equivalent?
Yeah. In fact, here's what I'd like us to do. Let's work two sentences that will turn out to be contradictory. Okay. All right. So suppose that we've got our first sentence worked out. We're not going to, sorry, let me rephrase that. Not suppose. We already have the sentence worked out. Here's what I like to do. I'm going to simply take right. So I'm taking the equivalence, and I'm now showing that these sentences are contradictories. So sentences that are contradictories are never true at the same time. They're never false at the same time. They always have opposite truth values. And this will be a really nice thing for us to remember when we get into chapter 6. Okay, so these are not equivalent.